When you shoot a muzzleloader, you need to mark on your ramrod. You need to put a mark on there for when that is down in the barrel when the gun is empty, and you also want to put a mark on there for when it's loaded. I shoot 100 grains of powder and I shoot the same bullets all the time, so these marks never change. When I first get my muzzleloader out, other than inspecting the barrel physically to make sure nothing is inside it, I drop this down in there, and if it goes down to that mark right there, which I just scribed on there with my knife, I know that this gun is empty. If I drop it down in and it stops right there instead, I know it's loaded. If I drop it down in and it stops somewhere in the middle, I know something is definitely not right and I need to take it apart and figure it out. But really, you have one position for loaded and one position for empty. That prevents you from accidentally double loading your rifle and killing yourself or killing somebody else. Safety is number one with firearms. Normally I'm out in the field doing this, but since this is deer season, I always load this the night before. And in Michigan, it's legally not loaded until you put a primer in the nipple. So all I'm going to be doing here is putting the powder and bullet in the barrel. But there are a few safety tips, and a lot of people don't know this stuff, and it's really important that you know the safety first when you're dealing with firearms. Number one rule is never ever point that barrel at yourself or anything that you don't want to shoot. If you do that, you will never shoot anything you don't want to shoot. That's the number one rule. And if you break that rule and you shoot something you don't want to shoot, I don't call that an accident. I call that a big mistake on your part. But what I do is I have these preloaded powder measures, which, I just take my powder measure and preload these with powder, 100 grains. I've already, as I showed you before, I put the ramrod down the barrel. And I made sure that it's on my empty mark, which it is. Next thing, this is an inline muzzleloader, by the way, no patches. Pour the powder in. I like to give it a little tap to settle it. Now the only thing difference between an inline and a side lock or a percussion or a flintlock is the way you seat the bullet. With this, there's actually a plastic sleeve on there, and that acts as your wad or your padding or whatever you want to call it. You put that bullet in there. You take the small part of your bullet starter, and you start your bullet. Then you take the other one, work it in a little further. Then you take your ramrod, and finish it off. Take it down and seat it firmly down on the powder. But don't sit there and just keep cramming and don't pound on it, because you'll likely mess up your bullet to throw off your accuracy, and there's a lot of other reasons you just don't want to do that. You want to make sure it's firmly seated, and that's it. Pull the ramrod out. Put the ramrod back in place. Put your primer in and the gun is ready to go. But I'm not going to officially load that weapon until I'm out in the field. And when I leave the field, I'm going to unload it by removing that primer. I think this is important stuff, and you know, I think I don't see a lot of this type of stuff on YouTube, and I'd like to see more of it. I see a lot of people doing dangerous stuff with guns and knives and axes, and I've seen some people get hurt, and I've seen some crazy videos of people almost shooting their heads off and stuff, and this is important stuff. This is the most important aspect of hunting or survival or whatever you want to call it. Gun and knife safety 101. I hope that's helpful. Just another real quick thing. I want to make a point as to why you don't want to point this gun at you. Now, I know this is a muzzleloader, and I knew it was unloaded before I poured that powder in there. But what if I'm out in the field and I take a shot at a squirrel, and then immediately I bring the gun down and I pour some powder in there to reload it? What if there's a small ember down in that barrel still? That powder's going to ignite and come blasting right up in my face. You want to make sure that barrel is pointed away from your face when you first pour that powder in there. Once you got that powder in there and it's sat there for a few seconds and it doesn't go poof and come flying out of there, you know it's safe to go ahead and put your bullet in, because obviously you do put your hand in the line of that bullet when you're loading it, but you have no choice with a muzzleloader. You have to do that to load it. But you know that there's no primer in the nipple, and you know that that powder is seated in there and safe before you ever put that bullet in there and before you ever, you know, get your hand up over there. Now, if I'm pouring the powder in and it blows up, yeah, my hand is going to get burnt, but at least it's just going to be my hand and not my eyes and my face. So, just keep that in mind, you know. I don't want to sound like I'm preaching to the choir, but I do think, you know, I put all my emphasis on safety in the woods, and I just hope everybody out there has a real safe deer season, and I hope you all get a deer. I hope I get my deer. Thanks for watching.